This is AFKast, the video game podcast. And here's your host, Malcolm Sheaver.
Now, I recently got back into mobile games. Some of you might be thinking, oh no, Malcolm's going crazy.
Someone call an ambulance! He's turned to the dark side.
And yes, I know that they are a hot topic in the gaming community, and I'm here to share my opinion on the matter because I believe that they are both are and are not video games. So this week on AFKast, we are talking about the very controversial topic of mobile games in the gaming community. So first, I want to talk about the games that I will be mentioning that I consider to be games that make you a gamer in the mobile gaming community. Holy crap, I said game a lot during that. Those games would be Clash of Clans, Boom Beach, Clash Royale, Plague Inc., Tom Clancy's Elite Squad, and the Asphalt Racing games. I'm sure there are more out there that I would actually consider to be a gamer's game, but we are going to be talking about some considerations of why these are considered a gamer's game to me. So some of these do overlap a little bit as well, but the first thing that I will talk about is complexity. You can already eliminate so many games with this very vague requirement. So many games are simple puzzles or random obstacles that you have to overcome, but there isn't much depth in the game itself. So everything that I will discuss now delves further into that complexity. First of all, there's composition. Composition includes stuff like base building or army training in Clash of Clans or Boom Beach, or building your deck on your team in Clash Royale or Elite Squad. Doing these allow you to further yourself in the game and overall do better, and it takes some thought. It also leads us into a couple other categories, strategy and customization. Strategy is the more important of the two, which is how you go about playing the game. In Asphalt, this could be what route you take, or even when you use nitrous. It could also be where you deploy your Plague in Plague Inc. and what upgrades you actually give it throughout the game to battle any cures, or even just to kill people faster. Sounds messed up, but I mean, it is. It's Plague Inc., let's be real. And for most of the games that I picked, it primarily focuses on strategy. And I think that's kind of an overall theme in general for what makes a game in general. And that goes for like console and PC too, not just mobile games. I think there is always some kind of strategy in a game, even if it's just very simple and down to earth, like the strategy is just follow all the main objectives in the game to get to the end, or the strategy is to ignore a bunch of the enemies or kill all the enemies. So simple stuff, but I mean, it works. It really helps with, defining a game. And especially the deck building and tower defense games are very strategy based because if you don't build that stuff correctly, then you just completely just get messed up throughout the game. Like, your playing is terrible. Customization is both for looks and upgrades. Every game I am using for this episode has some form of customization. Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, and Asphalt all have aesthetics for various items in the game, including cars for Asphalt. Clash Royale has stuff for like the towers. Clash of Clans has stuff for like the scenery or the heroes. That's just aesthetic stuff. But all of the games that I am doing for this episode have some form of an upgrading system. So Clash of Clans and Boom Beach have to upgrade their troops and defenses. Elite Squad and Clash Royale have to upgrade their deck. Plague Inc., you can modify the diseases before and during the game. And Asphalt allows you to upgrade the vehicles for better performance throughout the game as well. A lot of games don't have any sort of upgrade system that changes how the game plays or works. Not to mention, some of these games have battle passes that actually unlock these customizations in terms of aesthetics. And anything that has a good battle pass in it is definitely considered a game in my book. Because if anything is big enough to actually have a battle pass and not something that's just like quickly thrown together to make the game look bigger, it definitely deserves some kind of praise. especially with how many people actually play the game for that battle pass as well. How many people like grind it out is kind of what I mean. And that kind of leads us into progression, which is another big thing in games. Most games have progression no matter how small it is, but simply having different levels in a game doesn't make it video game worthy. So progression is something that you have to work towards. So even games like Rise of Empires, I wouldn't consider it to be a video game because, for one thing, it was definitely quickly designed. Another thing is that there is no working towards progression. You get items in the game super quickly, and you really don't have to try to actually grind for those items. And then, not to mention, it's also like, I'm not sure if it's entirely a knockoff of Clash of Clans and stuff, because they do have a fairly different system for how stuff works, but it definitely is based around that same genre. But I'm not going to call it a knockoff just because it's tower defense, because it is fairly different, but there is really no working towards progression, so I still don't consider it a game. And the only issue you'll have is having to wait a few minutes for a build to actually finish in Rise of Empires, and that doesn't really count as progression with waiting for something to occur. But it basically just depends on what you're progressing towards and how you actually start that progression, essentially. And stuff like Asphalt has a huge line of progression that takes at least a year to get through if you don't pay for the game, that is. And getting to the end of any of these games on my list take ages, and you really have to work for them. Some games take multiple years to complete, and that's more than some video games on console or PC. To be fair, part of that is having to wait for stuff to get done or recharge or whatever it might be, because stuff in like Clash of Clans, once you reach like the higher town hall levels, each item takes like, or each building takes like a week to upgrade, which is insane to me. And that's the only thing I can really see like as considered to be like what isn't a mobile game, essentially. And that's pretty much the main con to mobile games is like having to wait for stuff to actually happen. I think that is where a lot of people stop with their idea of a video game, and I understand that completely. Anything that completely halts your progression for a period of time for seemingly no reason except to get you to pay for part of the game is a little frustrating. Not a little, it's pretty frustrating. But I think that's kind of how mobile games just are in general. But I don't think that should disqualify them for being in the video game world. I think mobile games are kind of tied into that, you know, having to wait for stuff to happen or you have to pay for it to happen. And that's a sad reality for mobile games, but that's kind of how it works. But at the same time, it shouldn't dismiss you for being a gamer just because you have to wait for something to occur. Especially since a lot of those games now are actually making it so there's a lot more to do while you're actually waiting, so that way you don't just like play the game for 5 minutes, have to wait for a week, and then play the game for another 5 minutes. Now there's like actual leagues and competitions and stuff like that that occur throughout the game, which is pretty cool. Like there's a lot of scoreboards and a lot of like, you can be the top clan in Clash of Clans, you can be the top player, you can be the top builder base. Like there's a lot of different stuff that you can get into, and that kind of leads us into competition as well, because competition is a fairly big thing, and it's somewhat the last thing I want to talk about as well. Competition has always been a just big thing in video game culture in general, and it makes sense why that is. I mean, it's pleasing to go against someone else and absolutely crush them. And I think the only game on here that doesn't have competition is Plague Inc. And I'll kind of explain what the alternative is to competition for Plague Inc. after I'm done talking about competition. And even that you are competing with the cure in the game, which is still kind of competition for Plague Inc. And trying to fight it off as you try to kill the planet and fighting off the cure and stuff like that. In general, and adding symptoms and stuff like that is kind of a form of competition for Plague Inc. But it's not quite what I'm talking about for other games, where other games you go against like players and stuff like that, or you try to rise to the top of leaderboards or fight for some kind of spot in something besides just to complete something against AIs or a computer program in general. But the competition in these games get you rewards and further your progression in the game if you succeed. And if you don't succeed, then you get knocked down on your ass. Whether that is because you have to spend resources to build your army back up again, or you lose trophies, or if you wasted something for no reason. Having consequences for failing is a big thing in video games, and I think the only game on my list for this episode that doesn't have many consequences for failing would be Elite Squad. All you lose in that game is whatever energy you spent to go into battle, and you don't really lose much when you actually do lose. And another thing to throw in there real quick before we start wrapping this up is that Plague Inc. is considered a simulation game, which is what I was talking about that could replace competition. Plague Inc. is a simulation game, and which is kind of just another tier that pretty much nothing hits on mobile. Like, not most games on mobile are not simulation. I mean, I guess that goes for video games in general, but it's pretty rare that you'll find simulations on not Plague Inc. on mobile app stores. But I figured it was a good thing to throw in real quick because, I mean, it is something to consider because simulation games are considered video games, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of people also don't think that simulation games count as you being a gamer, quote unquote, which is kind of sucky, but I mean, I kind of understand as well why they might think that. But to wrap this up, there are a couple other things I just want to drop into this conversation. One is that there are rip-offs of games. A lot of mobile games, or a lot of mobile companies, actually make multiple versions of the same game just to get you to spend more money, which is a little annoying, but there are others that are rip-offs of Supercell games, or even Plague Inc. as well. Like when I searched Plague Inc. in the App Store because I was, trying to put together this episode, I saw that there was like 2 or 3 other apps that looked very similar to it, and I think one of them was like Infected Inc. or something like that. Like, those are obviously knockoffs. But another thing is that there are some mobile games that represent console or PC games, like Among Us, PUBG, or Call of Duty. And those are just a few examples, but those would still be considered games in my opinion. But I still think that those who play on console and PC do have a small leg up in being called a gamer, quote unquote. Except for maybe Among Us, since it's more of a party game than anything else. I think if you play it purely by yourself to fight other people, then yeah, I think people have a leg up on you. But if you're playing it as a party game, then I think everyone's kind of on the same field there, because I mean, the whole goal for that is to quite literally have fun. So yeah. And a quick list of things I see a lot of people debating that I don't consider as games are Doodle Jump, Jetpack Joyride, no matter how nostalgic either of those games are. Candy Crush, any of the 2048 games. There's been a ton recently. Solitaire, Sudoku, none of those like puzzle games, like those don't really count. And because they're puzzles, they're not games. But anyway, and then a bunch of those like weird matching games as well that you like slowly build stuff up by matching stuff together, I think is what it was. I don't know. I've never really played those games because they never seemed interesting to me. They seem to be more geared towards like I don't know, like 7-10-year-olds. I don't know what consumers those are for. Either that or people who just don't have anything better to do. Which is fine. Like some mobile games are purely meant to waste time, and I don't knock anyone for that, but at the same time, you can't call yourself a gamer just because you're playing Candy Crush and have like 1,000 levels in the game. But one last note that I actually just remembered is that there aren't many advertisements as well, if any, in the games that I've listed. So a lot of other mobile games will have you watch an ad after you do literally anything, but stuff like Clash of Clans, Boom Beach, Clash Royale, none of those have advertisements. I think Plague Inc. has some advertisements, but I don't think they have any like pop-up ads that come out that like hinder you from playing the game for a short amount of time. But I think they do just like somewhat show ads, but I think it's for their own game. I don't think it's even for other games. But that was the end of the mobile games episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you want to support the mobile games side of AF Community, make sure that you check out the clans, task forces, or guilds in any of the games I mentioned during this episode. All of those will be called AF Community, so you can search that up and you can join if you are a fan of AF Community. And it accepts everyone. It doesn't matter what like town hall level you are. It doesn't matter how far you are in the Clash League for Clash Royale, anything like that. So you can join no matter who you are. All I would say is that for those who don't join just to be in the clan. Like if you actually play the game, you can join. But if you're just going to join just to be there and not to actually play anything in the game, then please don't join then, because I want some actually active people in the clan, because I think that'll be pretty fun. Or task force or guild or whatever, anything like that. But yeah, so they're open to anyone, and anyone's able to join until they are full, obviously, because I know there is a limit per game. I think pretty much all of them are around 50 players is where the limit kind of ends. But besides all of that, make sure you join those clans, task forces, and so on. But yeah, game on.
Find AFKast on Instagram and Twitter, @AFCommunity, for any updates on future podcast episodes. If you want to join the community Discord, find the link in the description or on the website, afcommunity.com.